Jerry Gidel is back to Connected Farmer to talk about the weekly price changes and the Wednesday U.S. quarterly stocks, and yet the planting levels for the coming crop. Right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, as usual, first we can talk about these market prices, starting with corn. What happened there?
Well, according this week, it was kind of sluggish. I'm not sure exactly why it didn't have much of a thing because we had some optimism of beans that got things going on soybean oil early part of the week. But the corn market, I guess they anticipated the fact we were going to have a very good export total here, which we did. Boy, it was a amazing 4.4 million metric tons or 170, I think 75 or 76 million bushels of corn in that. But yeah, it's kind of the old adage that's in the commodity markets. Buy the rumor and sell the facts. So the corn market got kind of sluggish. We've been basically in this kind of trading range back and forth. The other twist of it is that the numbers ahead of us here on our U.S. Supply demand is going to tighten up because of the activities of the Chinese over the last couple of weeks. But in the short term here, when you have a report like we have here in March 31st and the plain intentions and also quarterly stocks, they always seem to prompt people to decide maybe it's time to be on the sidelines ahead of those things. I've heard some commentary about that too in the corn. Soybeans, up and down the ladder here this week. Earlier in the week, the soybean oil market broke out, and in general, veg oil markets have been the talk of the town here for 6, 8, 10 weeks. Really, as to some extent, since the first of the year here. Palm oil production isn't really expanding yet in a seasonal basis at this point. Tight supplies around the world and all the competing oils, soybean oil being the number one. Versus the total output of veg oils from in the world. And then, but we had a very, very big vegetable oil conference in Malaysia here midweek. All the big world vegetable analysts, including Thomas Milkey of Oil World, and they all were very cautious about soybean oil in general, all veg oils, possibly coming into a peak period here in the near term or next month or something like that, primarily because the seasonal output of palm oil comes into play here on a normal basis. And that the twist of that is we've had a whole different approach here on the use of biofuels, biodiesel, the green revolution. The present administration in the U.S. is promoting the idea of having more that type of approach here, partly for the environmental, partly to conserve energy, possibly. And that actually, interestingly enough, a couple places in the world that potentially could have reduced down their biodiesel portions here. I think one of them was Brazil, and another one was in Asia, where they left their biodiesel proportion at I think 13% is what I remember for Brazil, and that didn't change it when there was ideas they might reduce it, and they didn't. But the twist of it is that since that report on midweek, soybean oil has been kind of in a tailspin here. maybe because of the projections, maybe it's time to take profits in the oil meal spreads. Maybe they got too far out. Maybe there's some relationships of short corn, long beans at that. We had we had limit down prices Thursday and near limit down today in oil, soybean oil. But I really kind of feel like this after a 5-cent correction here was 2.5 cents per day is the limit, and that and that where we're at. Get down around 50 cents in the U.S. here on this oil. I'm not sure how much further it's going to go because we really do have a tight situation going ahead, and we're going to need oil there. So the setback this week on soybeans and soybean oil maybe a little overdone. And I think the real important factor as we look into next week is how does the U.S. acreage look? And soybeans is that's something that's really important in this market because things don't look as that's kind of an interesting world. We'll go on to stocks and planning next.
Yes, I want to ask you first if you think the market has already priced the fact that in a few days or a little bit more, China would shift their demand to South American beans and corn.
Oh, well, they've definitely their demand issues. U.S. wise, our shipments out of the U.S. on soybeans are going to be very minimal going forward here. Actually, the sales at this point was announced yesterday were only about 20 million towards less than the USDA number, which is something for the April report more than it is next week's numbers. But at the same time, on corn, that particular side of the equation is quite interesting. We're going to have a big shipping period here for corn, while South America's second crop corn comes in its values, and that's to me is probably the big factor here in corn, even with the planting numbers and stocks numbers in the U.S. Is if this safrinha corn has any kind of problems here, and it's very tenuous because of the late plantings we've got. I hear there was a report out, I guess late last week, early this week, we're still 10% behind the average planting dates for corn in Mato Grosso. That's 86%, I think the number was, and that's very interesting. That just pushes more and more of their output potential into a declining window of moisture. Basically, after the 1st of May, things can start to slow down. And I think one of the interesting features there is that this last week when we saw the weather in Argentina improve, while it started to show dry tendencies in Brazil, the South America's antenna on crop ideas definitely sprung to action there about, is this an indication of a dry season starting already? And I think that's a little early for that one. But even then, we're going to be watching the Mato Grosso's moisture content and the crop sizes in that country all the way till May, or into May really at this point. So that's a real interesting world out there because with the demand has occurred, part of it's coming from expanded Chinese demand, but in general, the last couple of years of kind of tenuous crops around the world. Europe's had some lower crops. We've had some less than stellar crops in that. So there isn't a lot of extra grain floating around here. So everybody's a lot more pins and needles than they used to be.
And on Wednesday, what do you think the USDA is going to say about the stocks?
Stocks are interesting in the fact that we're in a situation where the market situation on things are interesting in the point of view that the wheat stocks are going to be there, but nobody's going to really pay a lot of attention to them. the attention is going to be on soybeans and corn. After some of the numbers we had back in the December stocks, which were lower than expected by a significant amount on corn, and that we had very strong kind of uh, swing of supplies into the feeding sector. Now, to some extent, that's always interesting in the fact that there's in the feeding demand number is not a number you calculate. It's a residual of the fact of how much we actually exported or how much we might have processed into ethanol or other things here in the U.S., and then what the stocks number happened to say. I think the key thing on December is that the on-farm stocks that producers ended up having in their storage facilities was lower than expected, primarily because the fact that the number of, the actual harvesting of the crop had a lower moisture content. That's the same thing that impacted the crop numbers at the elevators too. And so that's an interesting one. I kind of feel like that our stock numbers are going to, or excuse me, our feed usage numbers are going to be comparable to last year. And actually, though, it might actually be a little less because a prominent U.S. Report here that's highly important to corn usage was our quarterly U.S. our quarterly, Hogs and Pig Report was released yesterday. And that was still being about unchanged or maybe slightly lower here on market hogs in the U.S. The average or the actual numbers came out closer to 2% down, and that, considering the fact that we hadn't really seen a lot of the slaughter numbers hadn't dipped very much until we got in maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks. That really was kind of a surprising one, but that could make this stocks number, which the trade average guess here from Reuters is 7.77 billion bushels. My expectations was for about 90 million higher than that at 7.86. The 100 billion is not that big a deal on corn. That's right now we just had 176 million sold to China in 1 week. So, but in reality of the whole thing is that that'll be watched closely. And if there's something a little higher than the 1.77, that'll catch people's eye. On the soybean side, that's another tricky one to look at. The trade is looking for 1.54 billion bushels. I'm looking for a number that's about 100 million less than that. And I guess it's a combination of the fact that I think that last fall's residual number that was only 75 million, and considering how big of an export program we had, that didn't really fit the bill of what seasonal ideas we've seen in that number for years and years. You had a big export program, you had a big residual during the fall, and so that's a part of what is a part of that. You have beans in transit from in barges in the U.S. from the Midwest down to New Orleans, or you had trains going back and forth. You got a certain amount of volume in those things. It's not in the elevator. It's not in the export facility. It's not on the farm. And so that's the transit version of the thing. And that when you have a big program like you should have a bigger, in essence, residual. We didn't have that. So I kind of feel that's has a little snap there. And then the other interesting feature that happens in this thing every year, we've got seed bean production in the U.S. is basically a contractual situation from farmers to the seed companies out there. And so the seed companies get a certain portion of their beans in the fall by December, but probably over half of them or more are on farm and then move during the wintertime. So, and that's my differences in the opinion. I guess we'll find out if the residual goes back up, that could be startling to this market. But I think the real key thing is going to be in the planning side.
Yeah, so what about the US planning so far? Is everything perfect as of now?
Well, things have improved a lot with this rain that came across the central U.S., across from Nebraska, Kansas, through Iowa, Missouri. There's a few spots in there that didn't get as much rain as they could have had, but in general, considering where things were at with the dryness that was out there from really Colorado westward, and it was still impacting the western Midwest or even the plain states, if you want to say it. That has improved. From there, we still need more, and we're going to need more because we don't have a lot of subsoil moisture. But the couple things are still out there that are important to the corn and soybean acreages, and that's the Dakotas area, North and South Dakota. They didn't have much snow up there. They haven't had a lot of the rain that's come through. And then conversely, the other side of the coin, another important producing area is what we call the U.S. Delta, which basically is from the St. Louis, Missouri, straight south to New Orleans, right along the Mississippi River. A lot of productive land through there. And surprisingly, they've had too much rain because the rain activity, in many cases, other than this one good swath that happened here 10 days ago, has really been coming from the Texas area up through northeastward, through the Tennessee and Ohio River Valley in the northeast. We've even had some very severe weather here yesterday going through that same area. And so they've actually got too much rain. And interestingly enough, because of the climate situations in the Delta, they like to get a lot of their corn particularly planted by April 10th. April 15th, they feel it's getting too late. So we're in a situation where that's definitely too wet in Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and on into southern Missouri. So that's an area that could be impacted by weather this spring. But right now, in general, the optimism is around for a planting season that's going to start in many places here during the middle of April and afterwards. But the big question is how many acres are we going to plant? That's the big number on Wednesday. Right now, everybody's getting more optimistic about corn. That's not totally surprising. There has been a long tradition of American farmers like to plant corn if there's a good price for it. And the price of corn's been staying up here while beans have been a little choppy and that. So the USDA was thinking 92 million acres are going to be planted back in February when they looked at their economic outlook, and made good sense in that. But there seems to be a lot of tendencies thinking that that corn number could go up. The trade guesses from Reuters is for a 93.2 million acres. So that's up over 1.3 million from the USDA. I'm a little less enthusiastic. I'm looking for about 500,000 to maybe 700,000, and that from the USDA's numbers. Now, all these compared to last year's 90.8. So we're going to have higher corn acres. The key question is, I don't know if we can afford to end up having a big jump of 93 or 94 million acres, because we really need, on the other side of the coin, is soybeans. And that, from the point of view that, with the smaller carryover stock and also the strong demand for protein around the world, and I definitely think that the Chinese are still going to be a very prominent buyer in next year in soybeans as they continue to try and ramp up their pork production and that. And so the USDA had a number at 90 million on their number back in February. I was kind of anticipating maybe 91 million acres is what we would see from the farmer out here. And maybe in some ways, I think we need 91 million acres, another million higher, primarily because the current expectations that the USDA is looking for is only 140 million carryover. That's a very tight number to begin a season with. You add 50 million to that at 190, that's more in the kind of carrying level I think that this market would like to have. At this point, though, the survey of, or at least the trade expectations are that there's not going to be that increase in 1 million acres. And they're still looking for a number right at 90 million from the Reuters survey. So that'll be interesting. If for somehow or other, and there is a tradition, by the way, that this number out of the chute on the planting intentions tends to have a number that's higher than the trade expects in corn and lower than expected expectations in soybeans. So if for somehow or other we took off 1 million acres in beans, could be quite interesting, our price reaction.
Yeah, and do you think on winter wheat, if winter wheat will have any impact on those acres of corn and soybeans? I heard that the weather has improved significantly.
Oh, it has. Yeah, the rain event we talked about before going across Kansas and Nebraska, and it also improved things in Oklahoma and Texas and some places. What that does potentially is that the winter wheat that was planted last fall is now going to potentially have a chance to come to fruition. There was some indications here 3 or 4 weeks ago that if the crop didn't look all that good, they might tear it up and decide to put something else in there, sorghum or some other crop. They probably wouldn't tear up wheat to put corn in just because if it's dry already, corn requires too much moisture, but to get it to fruition. But the twist of it is that the number of spring wheat acres is now potentially coming down, and that the trade guesstimate that by the way on that is 11.5 million acres. That's down from last year's 12.25. So 750,000 acres is, excuse me, that's what I'm looking for. The trade's looking for 100,000 acres more than I do. But in general, that's where the switch is going to be in the wheat is that because of the strong corn and soybean prices in South Dakota and North Dakota, and in general, just across the country, that's the area where you have wheat being planted. The one twist of that is that Montana is a big spring wheat producing area too. And there's not as much availability to switch those acres on over to corn and soybeans. They might take a shot at planting canola, which is the Canadian version of rapeseed and that. And there's talk of that happening even in North Dakota. But I don't see that it's going to switch into corn and soybeans in Montana just because the climate, season, and also the quality of land is not likely to happen.
All right, sir. Let's wait and see, and we are going to talk about that next week.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of excitement. The one kind of thing I left out there hanging is if we did have some type of number there on 88 million in that on soybeans, I think this market could be quite reactive to the upside. I think that's the one big number that could have this market a lot more excited and not be just waiting for South American weather. If for some reason or other the U.S. planting number has an 88 in front of it, that could make things kind of interesting, explosive. We could see prices get strong because of that. But that's we'll have to see what the USDA survey of producers says next week, because it won't happen unless we see it.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Have a good week.